when you're managing multiple people and personalities, you always have to say, you know, by the way, if anybody says, well, I treat everybody the same, what was it? I'm trying to think. It was, he used to talk about Vince Lombardi, and one of his players said he treats us all the same. He treats us all like dogs. No, it's just like, whether it's an organizational relationship or a personal relationship with staff, you have to recognize people's strengths, weaknesses, and the nature of their personalities.
This is the Chamber Chat Podcast, the show dedicated to chamber professionals to spark ideas and to get actionable tips and strategies to better serve your members and community. Hello, Chamber Champions. Welcome to Chamber Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Burton, and it's my purpose and goal here on the podcast to introduce you to people and ideas to better help you serve your chamber members and your community. Our guest for this episode is Bob Durkin. Bob is the president and CEO of the Greater Scranton Area Chamber of Commerce, a role that he's held since 2013. As CEO, Bob leads strategic planning, financial oversight, staffing, and programming for the chamber and its affiliated organizations. With decades of leadership experience across nonprofit, economic development, and regional government sectors, Bob previously served as president of the Northeast Regional Cancer Institute, a Northeastern Pennsylvania-wide nonprofit consortium supporting community and patient services, cancer research, and healthcare collaboration. Prior to that, he was the founding executive director of the Lake Lackawanna Heritage Valley Authority, advancing regional community development initiatives. Bob's longstanding commitment to economic and community advancement includes serving as vice president of the chamber from 1988 to 1993 and holding leadership roles across numerous boards and organizations. A graduate of Penn State University, he also completed advanced studies in public administration and organizational management, including programs at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the University of Delaware. A dedicated community advocate and mentor, Bob remains actively involved in regional initiatives from youth sports, continuing to champion growth, collaboration, opportunity throughout the Northeastern Pennsylvania region. Bob, I'm excited to have you with us today here on Chamber Chat Podcast. I'd love to give you an opportunity to say hello to all the chamber champions who are out there listening and share something interesting about yourself and correct any mispronunciations that I shared in your bio.
Well, being from Lackawanna County, where we have a lot of different Native American names, including Lackawanna, where the rivers meet. By the way, is what Lackawanna means.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a native of Scranton, the Scranton area, and remain and love northeastern Pennsylvania. And of course, we're all chamber people, right? So even in the dead of winter, where last week we were, arguably the thermometer said it was about 0 degrees. Anybody that asked me about it, I said, well, no, it's 75 and sunny in Scranton, always. My running joke about how grounded I am here is that the town I live in just outside of Scranton is called Oliphant, and it's just about 7 miles from Scranton. And I'm on my 4th house in Scranton, in Oliphant, and I always say I'm the George Bailey of the area. Every time I think I'm getting out of this town, I'm buy another damn house. So
There you go.
my personal the most important thing truly in my entire life that stands out when people ask what is unique about my world outside of the chamber world, it's that I'm a proud parent of a special needs son. My son Kevin, who's 33, has Down syndrome, and so much of what I and my family have done in those 33 years is wrapped around Kevin and our relationship, not just to him, but to the Down syndrome community, where we helped create a Parents of Down Syndrome organization. And I've been on the boards of several different special needs organizations in our region. So it's that's a really, if there's a signature element to me outside of my business work, it's Kevin and it's Down syndrome. So
yeah,
there it is.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'd like to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce. Give us an idea of the size, staff, scope of work to some degree. I know we'll spend more time on that. Budget, just to kind of set the stage for our discussion.
Sure. Well, and as Brandon, as you and I have talked before this, and we were going to be talking about in more detail coming up, the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce is a bit of an anomaly. You've heard this before in the chamber world. If you've seen one chamber, you've seen one chamber.
One chamber.
And we are certainly a signature aspect of that with multiple different divisions. We have actually 8 different ones under the chamber umbrella. And again, we'll dive into that a little bit later. This chamber, the chamber itself, we are 1,400 members strong. We largely represent Lackawanna County, which is Scranton as the hub here in northeastern Pennsylvania, but we often refer to a third. We have a third of our members in the city of Scranton, a third in Lackawanna County proper, and a third outside Lackawanna County in mostly in the surrounding counties and regions. Our sister city is Wilkes-Barre, which is right, just to the south of us in Luzerne County. We are, in addition to the chamber and the other affiliates, we really are the largest economic development organization in the region. Our budget, chamber budget, I'll use round numbers, is about $4 million. Our overall budget is a little over $8 million. As I said, roughly 1,400 members, and a staff of 26, all of whom work for the chamber, but are farmed out through management agreements to the various affiliates.
Very good. That definitely helps to give perspective, especially as we get into this discussion today, where we'll dive into these affiliates and the approach and structure and when things make sense and all of that. But I did have one question that I think is important for listeners that are probably wondering: is Dunder Mifflin Paper Company a member of your chamber?
Well, that was actually a very interesting question, and it's one that I get asked everywhere across the country. Not only is the company that inspired Dunder Mifflin, Pennsylvania Paper, that does exist, but beyond that, during the entire original filming and the 8 years or 9 years of it, every single episode of that included a member of our staff listening in and working with the directors and producers to make sure that there was an authenticity to all of their references to Scranton proper. So when you hear, if you're an Office fan, all the references to Poor Richard's Pub or Cooper's Restaurant or Lake Scranton, they're all real. And in fact, Pen Paper, the very company that when you see on the opening credits, you'll see a tower of an older building that says, that's Pen Paper. I can see that from my office. When I roll out my window, I can see it right there. So yeah, it's fun to have that. We have people probably every single week. We get calls from people all over the country who are traveling through Scranton, want to know where can I find this or that. So we have materials on this.
Yeah.
In fact, the other part of that was almost all the things you see on the desks of the office people came from us. We literally, in that time, our staff would reach out to our members and say, hey, give us some of your tchotchke or whatever materials. So when you look at that, if next time you look at the office, at the Pam behind her front desk, there's the plaque of the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce right behind it.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
I want to rewatch the series now and look for all the Easter eggs that are hidden. And I'm sure Michael Scott got his World's Best Boss mug from you, right?
And by the way, not to belabor this, but all of those folks have been here.
Yeah.
Including Steve Carell. They've all been into Scranton many times.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, we'll dive into this discussion about affiliate structures as soon as I get back from this quick break.
Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Rose.
And we're the founders of At My Community, a mobile app that can be customized to meet the unique needs of your Chamber of Commerce.
When we started At My Community, we envisioned a tool that would help communities thrive by simplifying communication and enhancing engagement. Chambers of Commerce face unique challenges, and we're here to help you tackle them.
At My Community helps the Evergreen Area Chamber of Commerce to create an app that keeps tourists informed even when their office is closed. They provide 24/7 access to local business information, which helps support the local economy and community engagement.
In Rocky Mountain House, we helped Rocky Chamber create an app with dynamic itineraries and digital resources for tourists, increasing local business engagement. The app has become an essential tool for the community, promoting events and boosting visibility for local merchants.
Today, we empower more than 200 chambers of commerce, campgrounds, and RV resorts to streamline communication, informing members about events, sharing business updates, and providing a digital hub for the community, all in one convenient app.
When you partner with At My Community, our team works closely with you to create an app that meets your chamber's unique needs. As your community grows, our app evolves with you. We are here to ensure you engage effectively with your members and streamline your operations.
Schedule a demo today at mycommunity.com.
We can't wait to meet you.
Are you ready to take your organization's funding to the next level? Hi, I'm Clint Neesmith, CEO of Resource Development Group. As a Chamber of Commerce or Economic Development Organization leader, I know you understand the value of working with experts who understand your world. And that's exactly what RDG does best. For over 30 years, RDG has specialized in fundraising for EDOs and chambers. We bring cutting-edge strategies tailored to your organization, whether you're just starting out or gearing up for yet another new funding cycle. Importantly, our firm executives are hands-on from start to finish, from the feasibility study to the successful conclusion of your fundraising campaign, and our team brings deep industry roots and national expertise to every engagement. No matter the size of your community, RDG delivers data-driven, innovative revenue solutions, reinforcing ROI to investors and making sure your vision becomes reality. At RDG, we proudly build organizations that build communities. Visit us today at rdgfundraising.com and let us partner with you, building a stronger future for your organization and the community you are working to grow and develop.
All right, Bob, we're back. As we mentioned before the break, we're going to talk about the uniqueness of what makes the Greater Scranton Chamber what it is, with the structure of these different affiliate organizations. You mentioned when you were talking about the chamber, how you have 8 Cs underneath the structure of the chamber itself. And I would be curious, I'm sure listeners are curious. So first of all, I think it makes sense to talk about what these different affiliates are.
Mm-hmm.
And when it makes sense to, whether it's spin up an affiliate or bring in an affiliate under the chamber umbrella, maybe that'll come up naturally as we talk about how these affiliates came to be and the purpose behind them. As you share about them, I'm going to pull up the screen for those that are watching this on YouTube. They can see kind of the structure as you talk through it.
So again, think of the chamber as the umbrella in this structure, and our chamber is, if I have the numbers right, I think we're 156 years old. We were called the Board of Trade in the for the first third of our existence almost. But then when the U.S. Chamber was created, we were actually one of the founding members of the U.S. Chamber, and that's a little over 100 years. So that's when we became a Chamber of Commerce. When you look at this structure from the, bear with me as I put my glasses on here, from the far, so look at the chamber at the top. So everything flows from the chamber. All employees work for the Chamber of Commerce, and several of the affiliates are actually legally owned by the chamber. Some are not. So again, from your far left, you'll see the box says SLIBCO. That's the Scranton Lackawanna Industrial Building Company. That is it. We're a certified economic development organization in Pennsylvania. So in the roughly 80-year existence of SLIBCO, which came about just post World War II, we do economic development in its purest sense. We build industrial parks and office parks. We've done 15 of them across Lackawanna County. Historically, we've created tens of thousands of jobs in that context. So even today, with most of those parks being completely filled, we still own about 1,500 acres of land. We have about 30 parcels that are prepared. So, if you turn that switch from chamber to economic development, you'll understand what I mean by that. The Scranton plan is our economic development marketing division. So it supports SLIBCO. The team literally is, scattered all over the East Coast or travels all over the country and sometimes internationally to try to promote the Scranton area. It's one of those things that I always find this interesting when chambers have either visitors bureaus or marketing divisions, and the people in the community say, well, why don't you go out and tell people about your area? So we do that all the time. Literally every day we're either online or in some sort of media platform promoting the region, or our staff are literally out selling the area to professionals, site selection professionals, commercial realtors and the like. The Lackawanna Industrial Fund Enterprises, has a kind of a cool history in Scranton and Lackawanna County, in that like SLIBCO and the Scranton plan came about post World War II. And it actually was a funding school for small scale industrial properties all over the valley. So that for those who've especially in the Northeast, that would recognize that their little towns used to have dress factories and shoe factories, and
Yeah.
almost all of them owned locally. Life at one time was the funding source for most of those throughout our region. It has morphed in more recent years to be sort of an in-house endowment that we have, substantial liquidity relative to Scranton. To put it in context, there's about $7 million worth of liquidity in the fund, and so we use that internally now to support some of our activities. And I'll try to reference that later on as well. Skills in Scranton, the first blue box that you see there, that is our workforce development arm. And you can see I've attached on those the various 501 designations, so that I'll back up and say this Scranton plan actually is simply a division of the Chamber of Commerce, whereas Slipco is owned by the Chamber. Life and then Scranton Plan are separate, 501c4 and C3s. So Scranton Plan, Skills in Scranton rather, is our workforce division. It's a business education partnership where our team works with both secondary educational institutions, and there are 10 school districts in Lackawanna County, and we also work with school districts in perimeter counties as well, to do programs where we try to connect students with business and educators with business. Metro Action is our small business lending arm. For those who understand the small business lending world, at one point we were a CDFI, Community Development Finance Institute, which is a federal designation. So, but we've closed off that relationship, but we do revolving loan funds for small businesses, partnering with our banks mainly. Leadership Lackawanna is a traditional community leadership program, multiple programs for emerging executives, new to the C-suite executives, high school students. We have 6 different programs under the Leadership Lackawanna Fund. Next is our trust fund. It's the Neighborhood Development Trust. It's a small endowment, about $500,000 that we use for small scale partnerships with other business associations, for example. So while the Chamber is a large player in the region, many of our smaller communities, including Scranton, has their own business association. So when Scranton Tomorrow, that's referred to, when we do mural programs around downtown, or they have festivals or things like that, we use that fund to support them. We'll $5,000-$10,000 grants. When you go back down to the bottom, you see the Slipco utilities. So that's how complicated we are. We own a utility company. At one time, we provided water for 30 years. Actually, we provided water to one of our parks. We recently sold that to the local water utility. It came to the point where there was a major mainline pipe burst in Scranton, and we were at risk of having about 10 different businesses lose water for a week. And we were fortunate that was fixed. And then as the next day, I called the head of the water company and said, "Hey, you want to buy a water company?" So we sold the water company, but we held on to the utility because, as I referenced before, Slipco, our building company, we own properties throughout all these business parks. So it's useful to have a small scale utility company in our back pocket in case we need that. Ignite, which is a part of Slipco, and just because it's not a separate 501 doesn't mean it's not important. On the contrary, it's very important. We own 2 different buildings that are business incubators, one in Scranton, and Lackawanna County runs along the Lackawanna River. It's a a long stretch of maybe 50 miles, 40 to 50 miles. And so we have a property in Scranton that serves as an incubator. We have another one in what we call the Mid Valley, which is halfway up the valley. And we're about to purchase the assets of a third business incubator up in the upper part of our valley in the city of Carbondale. So we'll have 3 under Ignite. We'll have 3 different buildings. And right now we have roughly 50 startup businesses of all sorts. Many of them are sort of back office, technology-based businesses that we're nurturing in a 3 to 5 year period under the Ignite program. So you apply to be part of Ignite. You've got to have good financial standing. You've got to have a business plan. You stay with us for 3 to 5 years. Our staff, hands-on staff, daily meet with these people, take advantage of the core of talent we have in the chamber, and they connect these startup businesses with everything from legal, financial, marketing, you name it, all the different aspects, of course, for business startup. And the advantage there is that it's a two-way street. It helps the business startups, but it also helps our own businesses because we're connecting many of them to these fledgling businesses that are ultimately, sometimes they don't have the money up front to pay for those services. But over time, you make those connections, and when the businesses are successful, and many have been, many have grown our greatest success at one point was a company that went from 13 people to 1,800. Then others we've had a lot of the kind of the classic one guy working part-time. Ultimately, he gets to be 80 people, and then he sells the business to a larger enterprise and it cashes out. We have had a number of those. So it's really exciting. So all of this comes under our mission of attract, sustain, and grow business. Attract is sort of, you can see the slanted plane of trying to market the region. Sustain is sort of almost everything, which is sustain existing and legacy businesses. And grow is the Ignite program, which is our entrepreneurship program. There you go. We've
I
run
love
out of time.
No, this is great. And having that structure to share, hopefully those that are listening have a chance to see it. And I'll put it in our show notes too, so you can see the layout of the structure. But I think you did a great job going through and explaining that. Um, all right. So I've got a couple of questions as we look at the structure there. You had mentioned that Scranton Plan supports Slipco with the marketing for the economic development.
Mhm.
Um, which I think goes to the overall question of when does it make sense to stand up a separate affiliate versus having it be just a part of Slipco and being part of that affiliate itself.
Yeah, that is a great question, and I've been asked that a number of times, and you probably know this. A lot of chambers have looked at that, either to look to separate, or they've talked to, in the right size scale communities, should we put all these under one umbrella? I will tell you the pros and cons. There are about 100, but the things that kind of stand out are that sometimes, particularly when you're dealing with public policy or relationships with elected organization officials or structures. When you are an economic development organization, you almost always have to be playing the game with the state and federal officials, particularly, but also locally. Say, okay, we want some public dollars into the investments. So when we're developing a park, and we have not the newest park, the most, I should say, the youngest of our 15 different parks, is really 25 years old. And so when you want to develop the infrastructure for these things, you have to have public dollars in it. And it's difficult if you're trying to be the chamber speaking on behalf of the business community on a public policy issue. Let's say you're at odds with your elected officials on, unemployment compensation bill or, a child care bill or something along those lines. And then you say, well, we're at odds with you. We're taking a public position against that. And then the next day I say, hey, can you get us $1 million to help us with a plumbing problem, an infrastructure problem in one of our parks? So that makes it hard. And we've been in that space. And to this day, I'm pleased to say we've never compromised in what our leadership has told us to do or asked us to do relative to standing up for the business community from the chamber side. So it hasn't hurt us, but I can see how it could if you didn't play the game properly. So the way we do this, by the way, is that we maintain really strong, ongoing, regular relationships with all of the key elected officials so that they understand that there are going to be times we'll disagree with them and they say, fine, we'll disagree on this point, but it's not going to hurt the overall investment in the community. But if you don't play that game very delicately, it can be a problem. The other part of that is from a staffing standpoint, and I think I may have mentioned that all of our employees work for the Chamber of Commerce and
Yeah.
ultimately are farmed out in a sense to the various affiliates. Well, that sounds like a very simple thing on paper, but what you also have is I have people on the team with the economic development team who they see themselves as Slipco employees. They're doing economic development and that's their
Yeah.
space. Then you have the chamber people who are doing all of the, 50 different events and programs and educational efforts and blah, blah. And suddenly when it comes together and we try to keep it together, there are times where we butt heads. Communications, for example, is a very good example of that. Communications for our organization rests with the chamber, but with all the activities and marketing that go with the development side, the development people are like, hey, right, like tomorrow I need to do A, B, and C. I've got to get a flyer out. I've got to postings on different websites and social media platforms. And the chamber people are saying like, well, no, we've got the annual dinner coming up, or we have this. So there's a lot of headbutting there, and so we try to treat that in a very cavalier way, in a sense of saying like, hey, let's folks, we know we're going to run into this, so when we do, when that day happens, let it out.
Yeah.
And then we'll, if need be, bring it to me. But I'm lucky enough to have some really talented people running the various divisions in our executive leadership team. And they seem to handle it pretty well. But there are plenty of times. In fact, I'm telling you, when this is over, I have to deal with some emails that came across my screen this morning, where I'm going to have to do just that. I'm going to have to sit down with a couple of people and say, I know your priority is here, and so is yours.
Yeah.
Let's talk it out. So it's no different, really, in a sense that whenever you have a complicated organization, there are always going to be different people. Your staff, to their credit, wants theirs to be the best, and we are really lucky. I'm blessed, right, and talented people across all these different divisions.
Yeah. It sounds like you are, to be able to keep it all working and coming together in a unified, direction.
Yeah, when I started this job 13 years ago, I had a head of hair like Geraldo Rivera, and now it's here. You see what happens. Boy, is
For
that a
those that
dated
are
reference?
watching,
Huh?
right? I love it.
I might as well have said like what, somebody from the early 1900s for all that purpose.
Right? The 1900s, man. So you had mentioned the Lackawanna Industrial Fund Enterprise, how there's, a significant amount of liquidity in there, but then you also have the Neighborhood Development Trust Fund. So can you talk about I'm anticipating that there's very different purposes for those funds,
Yeah,
and how
yeah,
they're deployed. Yeah,
yeah.
share with us about that.
I'm sure you know from talking to other chambers that the wave of creating foundations, supportive
Yes.
foundations for the chambers is really strong right now. And in essence, we are blessed to have several resources that sort of predate that movement on the local or the current chamber wave. So with Life, again, in its heyday, it was this source of capital for local manufacturers. But once that changed, and really NAFTA really put an end to all of that, where we had once had literally, I don't know, 100 different small manufacturing operations in the valley, and literally all of them are gone now. And so basically my predecessors started to look at the funds, the life funds, as it were, and said, well, how can we use those in the greatest way, most useful way? And it really has come down to, well, let me back up for a second and say this: the good and the bad of having all of these affiliates in the chamber world. So some of them, especially the three key C3s. And for us, that would be Metro Action, our lending arm, Skills in Scranton, Workforce Development, and Leadership Lackawanna. Well, these are entities that could otherwise stand on their own. They're separate 501c3s. They have their own boards. They could otherwise be out in the world of a nonprofit world raising their own funds. But
Right.
because they come under the chamber umbrella, then the community knows that. Let's say some of our strongest supporters, banks or larger businesses, always look at it together. And so when we go to them and say, here's your chamber membership, and here's the sponsorship we want for the annual dinner or for this event or that event. And then we say, oh, by the way, Leadership Lackawanna is going to come back to you and say, we want you to sponsor this. And they say, but you're the chamber. You're all part of the chamber. So the result is that some of the smaller 501c3s that are under our umbrella have their hands tied. I can't, if they came to me and then said, well, we're having our workforce summit under Skills in Scranton, we're going to go to the biggest supporter of the chamber, Bank X or Company X. And we say, no, don't do that. We've already tapped them out on these other things that we're working on. So because of that, those smaller ones need support. That's where Life often comes in every year. And again, that's out of scale. Unless you know all the budget stuff, it may not make sense. But Life contributes about $200,000 a year to the chamber. Part of that is to pay for the building that we are in, because Life owns our building.
Okay.
That's just a complicated side note. But about $100,000 from Life, then think of it as a foundation, as an internal foundation. $100,000 a year goes to our operating fund, not to support the chamber per se, but to support those nonprofits under the chamber, because we're telling them, don't go ask for more money from somebody else. We'll simply support it. We use Life as our ballast, our financial foundation, to say if there's a loss, We simply go to life, and life will take care of the loss.
I like that. It's great. A great structure to have there, and to be able to just keep things cohesive as an organization. I noticed that you have life set up as a 501c4 versus a trust fund as a C3. A lot of people listening, they're going to be familiar with the
Yes.
C3 and the C6, but talk to us a little bit about the C4 and why that is
Yeah.
categorized as C4.
Yeah, C4s are economic development organizations, and that's really just a legacy issue. So when
Okay.
Life, Scranton Plan, and Slipco were created post-World War II, the two of the three were set up as C4s because Life was a lending enterprise at the time. It's an interesting question to ask because we're in the midst of a strategic plan right now, and the question some of our board members are asking is exactly that: should we switch that? Should we turn it into a C3, make it a pure foundation? And we may go down that road. I will tell you the reason that I like it in its current structure is our hands are not tied by some of the IRS rules that would apply to a foundation, depending on whether it's a public trust or a private trust, where the assets have to be maintained at a certain level. I happen to sit on a major foundation board, and the challenge we have there is we have a fiduciary responsibility to maintain the corpus, and so you can only spend so much money. Well, by having it in our current state, the way that we have it set up with Life, hypothetically, with $7 million or whatever we have there, if we wanted to spend $5 million, we could. We don't have a fiduciary responsibility to maintain the corpus in its current structure. But since we don't foresee that need, we're going to, through our strategic planning process, we're going to review that and determine if it makes more sense to turn those assets into a foundation and a C3 at that. So
Yeah.
it's a really good question because it fits what a lot of people are talking about in the chamber world right now.
Right, with the foundation structures. So I feel like we've touched on a lot of the upside, the reasoning why you have these different affiliates broken out, and the way it's organized, the way it is. I can see for those listening, they're like, man, that's a lot of work to keep these different balls juggling. I mean, if we're being honest, chambers are juggling different balls or plates or whatever you want to say you're juggling at any time. But what are maybe some of the downsides to having these different affiliates broken out like this? And you talked a little bit about the conflict that might arise when
Yes.
different goals kind of headbutt against each other. But what else might you see or warn
Yeah.
against?
Yeah. I mean, there's an inherent element of creating silos, where
Yeah.
people just feel like my program area is the best, mine's the most important. And so from a management standpoint, I'm always sensitive to that. And it's no different in the sense that when you're managing multiple people and personalities, you always have to say, by the way, if anybody that says, well, I treat everybody the same, was it? I'm trying to think of, he used to talk about Vince Lombardi. And one of his players said, he treats us all the same. He treats us all like dogs. No, it's just like, whether it's an organizational relationship or a personal relationship with staff, you have to recognize people's strengths, weaknesses, and the nature of their personalities. So from my seat, I'm always sort of balancing that. Who needs
Yeah.
to be coddled? Who needs to be yelled at? Who needs to be hands held? Who needs the freedom to do things on their own? It's a challenge. I like to think that I'd say our management team does a good job of that. But no, on a regular basis, maybe a weekly basis, we run into some sort of challenges along those lines in terms of the balance. From the community standpoint, from the outside looking in, I do like that people recognize that this organization has so many tools in our tool chest, and that is both good and bad because the old rule, like if the reward for good work is more work. And so, for example, in the vernacular of the chamber world, our program of work, we have the strategic plan, and then we have our annual program of work. And I said this to the board and the executive committee, which really, is our driving, management component. I've said this over the last couple of years to them. I said, we do the program of work, and for us, that's a July to June program year. So in like May or June, we approve next year's program of work. By the time we are 6 months into that, I can tell you the work of the organization, there's a third of the work that we do, sometimes more, that isn't even on that program of work. And it's
Yeah.
because the community recognizes the value of our team. And so when there's an issue, and right now, for example, we have an issue with hospitals. I mean, a lot of our brethren across the country are dealing with this, particularly in communities of the size of Scranton. We have 3 hospitals, and 2 of them were on the verge of being shut down because the parent company was walking away. It was a private enterprise. Well, so last year, I probably spent easily a third of my time working on with a group of community leaders to keep those hospitals open, including a substantial financial contribution to make this work. That was never even on our program of work, you know? And so the good, again, the good and the bad, we're proud of the fact that that people turned to us to be among the leaders to try to save the hospitals. But then again, what do you do with the rest of the work plan? And
Yeah.
you know, and there's I could point out probably every year in the last 4 or 5 years, particularly since COVID. Well, COVID's probably the best example.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, we became the enterprise to coordinate. We were part of the emergency management network for all of northeastern Pennsylvania, not just our county or our chamber, but all the surrounding counties and their chambers. We became the central source for, holding up a lot of things like, when the SBA was coming on with PPP and all
Yeah.
of the other, both health and business elements that were being played out. We were central to that for about a 6-county area, in partnership with our friends in the other chambers, but we're still the biggest, and, we had greater capacity. So the good, again, sorry if I'm all over the
Yeah.
map on this, but it's a good and bad of being the big dog. Everybody wants you to do something, including
Yeah.
every elected official, and we're happy to do it where we can. We're proud of it, and we're proud of our success. But
And I
there's
get
only
that. And sometimes you have to say no because it doesn't fit within the mission and
exactly,
whatever. But at the same time, if you say no
yeah,
to helping a major employer who's about to walk away, that's not a good
that's
look
right.
for the chamber either. So you got to
No,
adjust.
no.
Yeah.
The local, the regional airport needs our help. We're in the process of trying to get to reinstate passenger transportation from Scranton to New York City, which for us that's about a 2 hour. We're about 2 hours from New York, 2 hours from Philly in northeastern Pennsylvania, and so who's in the middle of the Amtrak proposal? But the chamber, and that wasn't on our books 3 years ago, but it is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in interest of your time, I think we need to
Okay.
start wrapping up, but it's been a great discussion. I wanted to ask on behalf of listeners who want to take their organization up to the next level, what kind of tip or action item might you share with them as they strive towards that goal?
Well, again, I mentioned before, and I'm proud of my professional association and personal association with the team at ACCE. I think that it's among the best assets. When I came back into the chamber world, and as you read my bio, I was vice president of this chamber back 35 years ago, left for 20 years to do other things, and then came back 13 years ago. And that's where I discovered ACCE. I would say anybody who has any interest in figuring out, do you want to expand your programs or do you want to contract them? The best asset, the best resource that I know of is ACCE. And
Yeah.
it's both, their leadership in Sherry and Kelly and others, but also is equally important is the networking. We're part of the Major Cities Council of ACCE. I'm very active with that. And so whenever I have an issue on these types of things, I now have on my contact list, I used to say Rolodex because I'm an old
That's
man, but
right.
my contact list, I can pick up the phone or I can shoot an email or whatever for a handful of really smart, talented, and eager friends and colleagues, because there's always someone out there who's done what you've done. And I'm happy to be that resource for anybody who may be listening and seeing our structure and wanting to know if they should follow this course. I'll tell them the good and the bad.
Yeah.
That's what's so great about chamber world, right? People sometimes say, well, all you chamber people are all type A personalities and whatever else. Actually, no, we're not. We are just like anything else. We're a mix. We've got both extroverts and introverts, and we've got people who are task people, and we have people who are, want to be talking, a bag, the big, hairy, audacious goals, and some want to make sure that you're blocking and tackling. I'm mixing my metaphors
That's
here, right?
right.
I'll use the blocking and tackling because I see you've got a football and a
That's right.
49ers helmet behind you. But that's what's great about the chamber world, right? If you really, if I always say this, if you know if someone is meant to be in this world, because we all do act the same way. We can be the spokesperson or we can be the worker bee.
Yeah.
We're a hybrid that can do whatever you need for the moment.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm sure you'll bring ACC into this response as well, but I like asking everyone I have on the show about the future. So how do you see the future of chambers and their purpose going forward?
Yeah, I think that both versions of the Horizons project, the original and the most recent one, I think have very, very strong elements that are portend where we're going. But then, like everything else, as I referenced before, we do our annual work plan. We do a strategic plan. We do our annual work plan, and then throw it out the window because something else happens. And AI, of course, stands out. And for us, by the way, AI/data centers have become, the discussion of the day, and they threaten to change a lot of what we have thought about, how we as a chamber operate and how we as community-based organizations connect with the community and in what way we do so. I think that using the data center issue as an example, because right now we have probably 6 different organizations, and ourselves included as a developer, talking about and dealing with the idea of creating data centers in the community. And there's pros and cons to this thing, and the community doesn't know what to do. So we have to step in, and we've brought in people to educate elected officials. We have taken people from literally a bus ride from Scranton to Northern Virginia, which is Data Center Alley, to Loudoun County, Virginia, to learn about this. So we have to play that center role in terms of the future and how AI is going to impact us and our communities. And I'd say the same thing applies on the political spectrum. We have to, Mick Fleming, the late Mick Fleming, always said, we're the sane center in the political arena. And today that's a tough place to find yourself, but we have to be that sane center in the political arena. We have to say enough of these extreme positions, and let's recognize what's best for the community. And that center, it's always, compromise and moderation. So
Yeah. Am I seeing a possible data center in the future as an affiliate for the Scranton Chamber?
Well, yeah. I mean, we hope as members, they darn well
Yeah.
better be. Yeah, this is really we are a test kitchen, as it were, for this right now, because we're a valley, and the main power lines for the PJM grid that serves northeastern United States comes and runs right across the top of our valley. And so we're a very popular spot for data center development, but we're also a settled residential area. In Northern Virginia, for example, it was agricultural space. And so open space that they filled in with these big buildings. It doesn't work quite as well when you're trying to build these facilities next to neighborhoods or in areas that are not industrial.
Yeah.
It's a lesson for the country. If anybody's interested in, I'm more than happy to share with our current experiences. But I'll go back, Brendan, you had asked the question earlier about how do you balance that chamber versus development side. Well, that's one of those nexus areas where we're having a challenge, because on the one side, on the development side, we're saying, yeah, job creation for the trades and revenue return to the communities. Not a lot of big jobs in the buildings themselves, but you get it on the front end and the back end. And then the chamber side is saying, well, it's all about our community, and the community is going crazy saying they don't want data centers. So it's a
absolutely. Well, Bob, this has been great. I wanted to give you a chance to share any contact information for listeners who do want to reach out and learn more about your structure or anything you've covered today. Where would you point them, and what would be the best way for them to connect with?
Well, the obvious starting point is our website, www.scrantonchamber.com. Our phone number, 570-342-7711. I'm extension 118. You can find me on our website and through those other contacts. We've got a great team. If I can't talk to you directly, I'll find someone on our team to be able to help you with any questions you have. And, you can also find me at any of the major ACC events. We're always going to be at the national conference, and I'm always also going to be at the major cities as well. So happy to be a resource for any of my friends and colleagues.
Very good. Well, we'll share that in our show notes for this episode. But again, I appreciate you spending time with us and sharing the structure and how you guys are approaching things there in Scranton and the greater Scranton area. It's a great example and something that we can learn a lot from, and how we structure and look to the future as well. So I appreciate it.
Great. So it's been great to chat with you.
If you are a chamber professional, be sure to subscribe to Chamber Chat Podcast on your favorite podcast app or now on YouTube, so you never miss a new episode. New episodes are released each week and delivered right to you. If you're finding value in the podcast, please take a moment to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. It really helps others discover the show. And most importantly, share Chamber Chat Podcast with your colleagues in the industry so we can continue to grow and strengthen the Chamber community together.
This episode is brought to you by Riverside. If you've ever thought about starting a podcast for your chamber or your business, one of the biggest challenges is recording high-quality audio and video, especially when you and your guest aren't in the same room. Riverside is the platform I use to record every episode of the show. It gives you studio-quality audio and video right from your browser, automatically backs up your files, and even creates clips you can use on social media. It's designed to make podcasting simple and professional without the headaches. If you're ready to launch your podcast or upgrade your recordings, head over to chamberchatpodcast.com/riverside to get started today. Again, that's chamberchatpodcast.com/riverside, the same tool I trust to bring you these conversations every week.